NFL Week 6 predictions. So filming this during the afternoon games, I don't know all the results yet, but you have your first game, the Chiefs versus the Broncos, is on Thursday night. Broncos, they're handling their business versus the Jets. Their defense has been horrible this season, though, like one of the worst defenses I think I've seen. Their offense, to me, has done well so far. Russ looks a lot better, and the Broncos skill position players look better also. But and the Chiefs, their offense has definitely looked shaky so far. Um, Against the Jets, Mahomes threw like 3 picks. Their defense has played well for the most part outside of that Jets game. Um, but it is a Thursday nighter, and the Chiefs have home field advantage, and has historically, or the past 5 years, have been the Broncos, and I just don't see the Broncos defense stepping up, so I gotta take the Chiefs. Then you have another London game again. The Ravens versus the Titans. Titans coming off a loss against the Colts, while the Ravens coming off a loss against the Steelers. Ravens offense, like I said, has been very inconsistent this year. They looked bad versus the Steelers outside of that one drive, mistakes. Their defense played all right, but not great against the Steelers. While the Titans, their defense surprisingly did not play that well against the Colts, and their offense did better. Hopkins had a good game. Tannehill looked better, not great. But to me, both these teams are defensive teams, but I think the Ravens have more offensive talent, so I gotta take the Ravens here. Then you have the Jaguars versus the Colts. Jaguars coming off a London win against the Bills, but they do have to travel back to the States. While the Colts coming off a win against the Titans, but it looks like Gardner Minshew, or not Gardner, Gardner Minshew will have to start, and Anthony Richardson is injured. Colts have been a scrappy team, but they do lack a little bit of talent. Their defense has played fine. Their offense has played fine, but nothing too impressive. While the Jaguars, their offense is still figuring things out. Last week against the Bills, they had too many mistakes. Their defense, though, I think has played really well. So I'm gonna take the Jaguars here. Then you have the Patriots versus the Raiders. Patriots, they got shut out by the Saints. Their offense looks horrible right now. Their defense, losing Gonzalez and Judon, did not look great, although they didn't look horrible either. While the Raiders, they play on Monday night. I'm not sure if Aiden O'Connell or Jimmy G will be playing. But the Raiders have not looked impressive. Their defense has not looked like horrible, but has not looked great. In their offense, it's just mid. But Raiders do have home field advantage, and with how bad the Patriots look, I gotta take the Raiders here. Okay, then you have the Dolphins versus the Panthers. Dolphins coming off a win against the Giants, while the Panthers getting blown out by the Lions. Panthers, their offense outside of Adam Thielen has just looked bad. Their other wide receivers have looked bad. Offensive line has looked bad. Bryce Young has looked bad. While the Dolphins, they played well. Their offense is super explosive. There's so many big plays on their offense, but did have a couple of mistakes versus the Giants. And the Dolphins defense played well against the Giants, but so far this season, the Dolphins defense has not played that well. But I gotta take the Dolphins here. They have home field advantage, and their offense is just too explosive for the Panthers to contain. Then you have the Bengals versus the Seahawks. Bengals currently losing to the Cardinals, while the Seahawks, um, coming off a bye. Um, Seahawks, last win against the Giants, their defense played really well. Offense really did not. While the Bengals, they have not looked good this year. Their offense has looked bad throughout, although they do look better against the Cardinals, and their defense has not been enough to carry them. To me, I think the Seahawks' improvement on the defense and their better offense will get them the win, even with Bengals' home field advantage. I gotta take the Seahawks here. Then you have the Browns versus the Niners. Um Browns coming off a bye. Niners play on Sunday night. Niners, I think they have the better defense and the better offense, especially with how well Brock Purdy is playing. The Browns do have a top defense, especially with Myles Garrett being the leading defensive player of the year, favorite defensive player of the year. But I just don't think the Browns have enough firepower to beat the San Fran defense, especially with Nick Chubb out. So I gotta take the San Fran here. Then you have the Texans versus the Saints. Texans coming off a loss against the Falcons, while the Saints coming up a blowout win versus the Patriots. And Texans. CJ Stroud looked good, but he's got to get better completion percentage. His stats are good, but for most of the game he was kind of mid against the Falcons. But he has had a good rookie season. Texans defense wasn't that good. Their Saints defense was lights out versus the Patriots and have been this season, but their offense, ever since that Derek Carr injury, has just looked very lackluster. But I do think Derek Carr is going to get healthy, and the Texans defense is not the best. And I do think the Saints defense can shut down the Houston Texans offense, so I got to take the Saints here. And then you have the Eagles versus the Jets. Jets currently play against the Broncos, while the Eagles currently play against the Rams. I just don't think the Jets offense will do enough. Their defense is good, and I think can cause problems. Definitely a trap game for the Eagles, but I just don't think their offense will be good enough especially against a very good Eagles defensive line versus a very bad Jets offensive line. So I got to take the Eagles. Then you have the Bills versus the Giants. Giants are probably one of the worst teams ever, and Bills, even though they did lose against the Jaguars, they've looked really good. And coming off the loss, I gotta take the Bills here. Then you have the Chargers versus the Cowboys on Monday night. Um, Chargers, they're coming off a bye, but so far this season, their defense has not looked good while their offense has been bailing out and they've been barely winning games. While the Cowboys, outside of that one fluke loss against the Cardinals, their defense has been balling out. Their offense has looked good. And I just don't trust Brandon Staley or that Chargers defense to do enough. So I gotta take the Cowboys here. Okay, then you have the Commanders versus the Falcons. Commanders not that good right now. They lost to the Bears. Sam Howell didn't look that good. They're outside of Sam Howell. They didn't look that good. Their defense was not good and has not been good this season. While the Falcons, they're coming off a win against the Texans. Desmond Ridder didn't do that good, didn't do that bad either. The run game didn't do that good or that bad, but I think the Falcons' defense has looked pretty good. So I gotta take the Falcons here, especially them having home field advantage. And you have the Bucks versus the Lions, a very interesting game. Lions come off a blowout win versus the Panthers, while the Bucks come off a bye. Bucks have looked good this season. Baker Mayfield has looked good. Mike Evans has looked great. Offensive line has looked all right, I guess. And their defense has not been horrible, especially the Bucks coming off a bye with the home field advantage. While the Lions, I think their off defense is much improved, and their offense did well against the Panthers. This one's going to be a close game, but I'm taking the upset. I think the Bucks coming off a bye and having home field advantage way too much, so I got to take the Bucks here. I have the Vikings versus the Bears. Bears coming off a win against the Commanders. Vikings coming off a currently playing against the Chiefs. And the Bears, it did look Justin Fields has looked good the past two games, but I don't see that being sustainable. He played two really bad defenses, and even though the Vikings defense isn't anything great, I do think Brian Flores can dial something up for Justin Fields. And the Bears defense just has not been good, while the Vikings offense, I think, will get the job done. So I gotta take the Vikings here. Then you have the Rams versus the Cardinals. Cardinals have played really tough this season. So definitely a trap game for the Rams. The Rams have also played really good this season. Their defense looks better. Their offense right now playing against the Eagles, Cooper Kupp looks great. Stafford looks really good, and the Rams do have home field advantage. And the Rams under Sean McVay have done really well versus the Cardinals, and I do think Cardinals will keep this tight, but I gotta keep the Rams. Give the Rams a win here. So there you have it, my NFL Week 6 prediction.